Horrified, we left Americans there. One administration official told Politico it was a hostage rescue of thousands of Americans in the guise of an NEO, non-combatant evacuation operation, and we have failed that no-fail mission. Another White House official said that the mission isn't accomplished if they had left Americans behind. You are the leader of the House GOP, one of the two leaders of the Republican Party in office right now. What is your message to the party in a nonpartisan moment of defeat and retreat and crisis?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's been a tragic couple weeks. My first message, not just to the party, but to the nation. We have 13 more Gold Star families. We have thousands upon women and men who have served us for the last 20 years in Afghanistan. My first message is to them. Job well done. You did exactly what we asked. You kept us safe for the last 20 years. The decision, what took place within the last month, solely rests on the Biden administration. We now find from this article that they don't support it either. You know, to be a successful president, you have to have the faith, the trust, and the confidence of the American public. I think this president in this last month has lost that in so many different ways. But what we need to do right now and focus, I just came back from DC yesterday. I was on the floor hoping, because we had what is called pro forma, that we can take action. We tried this a couple weeks before and the Democrats voted against us. Just 4 simple things that we should focus on. We have a Congressman, Mike Gallagher, who offered the bill. First of all, President Biden early on, just on the 19th, said the mission will not end until every American comes home. Well, that didn't hold true. Earlier in the month, they said there were somewhere between 11,000 to 15,000 Americans, and they tells us they got 5,600 out. But somehow that math equals up to less than 200. What is your plan if you knowingly left by leaving Americans? What is your plan to get all Americans out? That should be everybody's mission. Secondly, what is the accounting of the amount of weaponry we have left the Taliban? We know they now have an air force bigger than 1/3 of every NATO country.
That's so crazy.
As O'Brien likes to say, more Black Hawks than Australia. And they're going to utilize these, or they're going to sell them to our adversaries. Next is no cash for the Taliban. And very last, the big concern that we have, we should not recognize the Taliban.
Cash is king.
That's a different thing that I've been hearing. Those 4 items,
Clapping.
not just
So
to the
brave.
Republicans, but to the nation, we should all have answers to, and we should all focus on. There's a lot of other things we're going to have to focus on. But as a nation, how are we going to live with ourselves?
I'm currently waiting for Jen Psaki to come on, but Kevin McCarthy's talking, so I might as well put him on.
Didn't want to leave. I can tell you, and young Kim can tell you, and every single member, we were working day and night, even yesterday, even today, where people were going to the airport because the State Department told them to and left them. The president told the Americans to go down there. I have report after report as they went down there, the Taliban shot at them, tore their papers, and they'd run for safety. It wasn't a free trip to get into there. And as a nation, our reputation...
This is Kevin McCarthy's push to run for president.
It's not just what happens next week. It's for the next decades, the damage that has been done just in the last month alone.
So, Mr. Leader, in the last 3 weeks on my radio show, I've hosted everyone, literally everyone of significance in the party, from former President Trump to Liz Cheney, to all the
Sounds like
veterans
Adam
you mentioned,
McCullough,
Mike Gallagher,
Corolla.
and Dan Crenshaw, and Michael
I'm going to make a
Waltz,
sandwich.
and
I'll be right
others,
back.
Jim Banks, to Senator Leader McConnell and Bill Hagerty, who was an ambassador, at the same time Ambassador O'Brien with the Department of State. All of them said that the Doha Agreement did not oblige the United States to exit in this fashion, nor did it oblige us. There were conditions attached. How does Congress establish what happened and the interplay between the 19 and a half years of war that went before this and the end game so catastrophically executed by the Biden administration?
We have 3 co-equal branches. Congress has oversight. What Congress needs to be doing right now, first get the Americans out, but the oversight. I've had our 3 committees of jurisdiction send a letter to preserve all that information. We need people before us. Why were these decisions made? The other thing, as being part of the Gang of Eight, we get intel. I went to the agencies beforehand because I didn't believe, as I said before, President of Afghanistan, that they were going to be able to sustain themselves a month prior from everything I was hearing. I believe the president got intel, same intel that I got, but he made a knowing decision. When he closed Bagram, which was never President Trump's plan, you had 2 runways, but more importantly, you had more than 5,000 prisoners, a lot of the ISIS-K sitting there. And you left in the middle of the night without telling your allies. And what happened was, how we were being successful there, because the last 18 months there was no casualties, but the number of American troops was very small. Air power. But when you take the air power away, the Afghan military, or they believe that they're going to be able to win, even though they're losing thousands of casualties. And for the president to blame them, he's blamed everyone but himself, even though he said the buck stopped there. He curtailed the military by telling the military the number of troops they could have. So they had to close Bagram, but they closed it before the Americans were to leave. When you go through this library and you study Vietnam, when President Nixon went in, there's 550,000 American troops there. And the drawdown and the conditions. And when they broke the conditions, they bombed them. I watched the past administration, when conditions were broken, you cut it off, you punished them. So they learned not to do it, that no American died. This was a much different. This new policy with this President Biden is like a weak man theory. He's already given in to Putin, given him Nord Stream 2 and got nothing for it. He gave in to China. He gives in to the Taliban, hoping that later I'm going to build a relationship to get something. It goes against every doctrine America has ever had. Peace through strength. We've understood this and we've been successful by that. It's the complete opposite. And they've watched what has happened in this administration. They found the window and the opportunity. And it's put as an embarrassment on the world stage.
Ambassador O'Brien, President Trump, former President Trump, former Secretary of State Pompeo, and you have all said on the air to me in the last 2 weeks, the Doha Agreement did not oblige us to conduct ourselves in this fashion. And the former president said to me, O'Brien was the envoy for hostage affairs. I brought home 55 Americans. I would never have left Americans. Can you expand on what the conversation with the Taliban leader was that the president had, which I believe you were on, along with Secretary of State Pompeo, and what his attitude would have been towards leaving Americans behind?
Well, I can tell you the first thing, Hugh, and thank you for that question. And first, I want to join the leader in expressing our condolences to the families of the soldier, sailor, and the Marines who were lost. I think a lot of the Marines came from Camp Pendleton, just down the road from here. They're great Americans and fallen heroes. And the toughest thing you have to do as the President of the United States or as the National Security Advisor when you join the President or represent him is to go to Dover for those dignified transfers of our fallen heroes and bring them home. And so that was, and I went, I think, half a dozen times, never in a situation where we had 13 Americans coming home, as we saw in those pictures. And so our hearts and our prayers go out to the families of the fallen, and God bless them. And that goes for all the folks that served us, and especially those who lost life and limb and their families in Afghanistan over the past 20 years. And I agree with the speaker to be, the minority leader, that they did great work for the United States of America, and they deserve our gratitude and our thanks. And we don't want another situation like happened with Vietnam, where our veterans, it took years for our veterans to be recognized for their sacrifice, and we need to recognize them now. So let me start with that. Let me go talk briefly about the issue. Number one, the president believed in America first. And what that really meant, people didn't understand what America first meant to the president. That meant putting the American people first. So my first job in the administration was as a presidential envoy for hostage affairs. And that was going out to get folks like Pastor Brunson and Danny Birch and others, Zhizhao Wang, who was in Iran, going around the world to try and get Americans who were either wrongfully detained by foreign governments or who were held hostage by terrorist organizations and bringing them home. And we did it without paying ransom. We did it by employing our military, and we did it through very tough negotiations. I'm very concerned that my predecessor is a good man, Roger Carson's, Ambassador Carson's. He may be in a situation, Hugh and Kevin, where he's got hundreds of Americans that he has to get back. And he's going to lack leverage in those negotiations because we don't have Bagram. I mean, President Trump would have never shut Bagram. And if he ever did, it would have been the last thing he shut down. He would have bombed it to make sure it wasn't useful to the Chinese or the Russians or anyone else. But we've got very little leverage now to negotiate with the Taliban or ISIS, whoever takes these or holds these Americans. And so Roger's going to have a tough road to hoe, and we're going to have to keep him and the administration and everyone in our prayers who's trying to bring those Americans home. But they've left a very difficult situation for us. President Trump made it very clear in the Oval Office on numerous occasions to General Milley, to myself, to others, no Saigon-style withdrawal from Afghanistan. President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan. We wanted to pivot to China, the existential threat to our country. But we wanted to get out of Afghanistan with honor and dignity. So no Saigon-style departure, and unfortunately that's
Saigon-style?
No Americans left behind. No Afghan interpreters or other enablers left behind. And this really bothered the president. No American military equipment left behind. I mean, we've left, the Taliban may not be able to
$85 billion?
operate this equipment, but the Iranians can.
No
the
problem.
Iranians are going to come in for the biggest used car sale and used helicopter sale and used combat aircraft sale in human history. And we're going to equip the Iranian army, for the next 2 decades.
Catalina wine mixer.
In Afghanistan. Those were all things that President Trump said can't happen as part of a withdrawal. So,
how's it going, guys? I'm just waiting for Jen to show up. Kevin McCarthy
and then we can talk
and
about this later. We got to
I
think
don't know
about
who this
how do
guy
we
is
rebuild
talking.
American credibility around the world for our allies like Israel, Poland, Taiwan that are on the front lines of freedom.
I'm currently live on
there's a
Facebook,
doubt in those countries,
YouTube,
our friends,
Twitter,
but also a doubt
and
among our adversaries and
Twitch.
our foes, about how strong America will be in coming to the defense of our allies. So,
How you guys doing today?
A serious credibility issue that we have to address very quickly.
And we've woken up today, September 1st. President Biden, even when our allies, and think about it, France, Great Britain, Germany, is asking the
Apparently the press conference is going to start in a couple minutes.
Why are they even there? Because America was bombed. Because America was attacked 20 years ago, they're risking their own lives to defend us. He chose the Taliban over them and kept the 31st. So now we wake up on the 1st. You listened to the president last night. The question I have for him, one question. What is the plan to bring Americans home? You knowingly made the decision to leave them there, but you still have not given us a plan to bring them home. So why would you ever make the decision to leave until you had them home? That's what I don't understand from the president.
Leader, on Monday, I sought out Daniel Runde from the Center for Strategic International Studies, an Afghan expert, to talk about the refugee issue and how we process refugees. I then got an Uber back to my home in Virginia.
No big deal.
SIV,
Uber XL.
Young man from Afghanistan, 29 years old, brought his wife out under an SIV. Took him 6 months to get his Army colonel to vouch for him and the Floor Corporation for whom he had worked. His sister had been in colleges in hiding. His brother is in hiding. There are
Kelly.
SIV and SIV relatives.
Kelly, you're spot on, girl. Just waiting to hear two new twists on the administration's shit show. Honestly, this is one of the biggest shit shows I've ever seen in my life as far as trying to twist it to make it seem like we did a great thing leaving. And we did. And I will say, I am glad we're out. I am not in the camp where I feel like we should have air bases all over the freaking world. That's not. But that's just my opinion. But how we left is just insane. It's just dumb. Biden said we wouldn't have a Saigon moment. He was right. We had a cabal moment. I feel like it's almost worse. Maybe I'm too young and I don't know Vietnam that well. But this is just insane. We're going to wait for the videos to come of the people that they're going to capture. Those videos are going to be disgusting. The people that are still there is the problem. And the dogs and $85 billion in equipment that we left. $85 billion. And Iceland has 0 planes. We got to give Iceland. We should have just given them a few planes.
I have one question for you both, and then looking.
I'm waiting for them to start.
You are a group of 8.
Nothing.
To what extent, in the course from March, April, May forward, did the administration keep you and Leader McConnell, as well as Democrats?
This press conference right now is just happening before the press conference to come. I'm waiting for Jen to talk. I like to hear the twists, as you say.
I never remember one.
Uh-oh.
Gang of 8 meeting.
All right. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it. Hi, good evening. Wonder what the kind of energy is going to be in the room when she enters.
You're a lion, dog, face, pony soldier.
Hey.
All men and women created by go. You know the thing.
I need to get more clips of Biden. I have like 3.
Going for the shot, man. That's a tough shot. Yeah, and it's also very tough even. Safety move really slow, make it easy. Actually not slow.
Have a seat. Sit down. Sit down.
The way to do it is get someone to stand there, pre-focus, set it,
Know where to sit.
focus it where it's fixed. And as soon as you hear it coming, you have it set and you just hold the shutter down. Because, it's set to manual order, so it's not even, the camera doesn't have to, there's none of the steps the camera normally take.
Before she enters, we must play the music.
It's all manual.
Hello, Biden.
Anyway, that's my thought.
I wish he would walk into this music.
Interested in doing myself.
Here comes Jen. Here she comes. Here comes Jen on the Blue Wonder. Ostrovia. How you guys feeling this afternoon? Getting the chats. Make sure to share this with your friends and family. Share it on your social media platforms. There she is.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon indeed.
Okay, just a couple items for you all at the top. Another update on the hurricane. The continuing focus on the ground is on power restoration, as nearly 1 million customers in Louisiana, more than 40% of the state, remain without power in the middle of a heat advisory. While progress has been made in Mississippi since yesterday, 30,000 customers there still do not have electricity, and power restoration in parts of Louisiana could take weeks as crews assess the full extent of power system damage. To help accelerate these efforts, the president spoke with CEOs of the largest energy companies in the Gulf Coast yesterday and committed the full weight of the federal government to providing resources wherever they are needed. As part of that, the federal government is sharing aerial and satellite imagery to support damage assessments, helping with debris removal and traffic control so restoration workers and equipment can get access to downed wires and poles, and expediting permitting for rerunning of transmission cable across the Mississippi River and for standing up transmission towers. Federal personnel from DOE, the Army Corps of Engineers, and across government are on the ground assisting efforts, along with, as I've noted previously, 25,000 linemen. Lack of power and damage to the healthcare facilities in Louisiana remains a significant problem. We are prioritizing the deployment of generators to locations most in need, and about 1,800 patients
I can't
as of
imagine
today
being there.
have been evacuated from healthcare facilities with the help of additional ambulances that were pre-staged by FEMA. Cell service also remains an issue, as it has been over the course
get
of
some
the
more
last
coffee.
couple of days. And the FCC is working directly with wireless carriers and has deployed staff to Louisiana to prioritize recovery efforts. We know this has been incredibly difficult, continues to be for many people who had to evacuate because of the storm, and we continue to encourage individuals from impacted areas in Louisiana to apply for federal assistance. More than 31,000 households in Louisiana have already received a one-time $500 payment to support critical needs as a result of the major disaster declaration the President approved. I'd also note, this just went out, but in case you haven't seen it, on Friday the President will travel to New Orleans, Louisiana to survey storm damage from Hurricane Ida and meet with state and local leaders from impacted communities. We're just finalizing the details of this trip, so as more becomes
Just imagining
available, we'll
Biden
share them
surveying
with all
storm
of
damage.
you. Also wanted to note that today the White House and agencies across the federal government, including HUD, Treasury, and the Federal Housing Finance Authority, are announcing steps that will create, preserve, and sell approximately 100,000 additional affordable homes over the next 3 years, with an emphasis on lower and middle ends of the market. These steps leverage existing authorities and dedicate additional resources to affordable housing. Specifically, they will boost the supply of quality, affordable rental units by increasing the financing available through HUD, Treasury, and FHFA programs for affordable and targeted housing production, including a relaunch of the Federal Financing Bank's risk-sharing program, expanded support for low-income housing tax credit, and increasing access to the Capital Magnet Fund. And this will boost the supply of manufactured housing and 2 to 4 unit properties by expanding financing through Freddie Mac, which, along with existing policies, will enable more Americans to purchase homes. Last item, sorry, there's a lot going on today. Today, the White House, Treasury, and Code for America, a civic technology nonprofit, announced the launch of a new mobile-friendly and bilingual child tax credit CTC sign-up tool that is mobile-friendly and available in Spanish to make it easier, even easier for more Americans who do not regularly file taxes to claim their child tax credit. And as you know, this has been an ongoing effort of this White House and the administration to reach every single person we can who's eligible, even if they are non-filers. We will link this new tool through childtaxcredit.gov, while the Code for America tool is an important and necessary resource to help more families this tax season. Treasury remains committed to creating a permanent, fully resourced, multilingual, and mobile-friendly government sign-up tool. That is a process that is underway. That is all I have to highlight for you this morning or this afternoon. Go ahead, kick us off.
Here we
Thanks,
go.
Jen. 2 subjects. First on COVID. In Louisiana, state data suggests that about 10% of hospitalized patients are vaccinated. Is it still accurate to call COVID a pandemic of the unvaccinated? And could that phrase that's been deployed frequently by the White House possibly be counterproductive at this stage to protecting some Americans?
Well, I would say first, we continue to track data closely through the CDC and all of our health and medical experts who do show that across the country, the vast majority of those who are hospitalized, vast majority, are individuals who have not been vaccinated. That has not changed.
And you
any
should tell
health
them
and
their
medical
age.
expert, whether it's Dr. Fauci, Dr. Collins, Dr. Walensky, will tell you that vaccination is very effective in protecting from hospitalization and death and serious illness. That is
And
our
age.
objective, is to save more lives.
Weight.
So that hasn't changed. our
Smoking.
messaging.
Secondly, obviously in Texas with the law with regard to abortion, the president said in a statement he will protect and defend Roe versus Wade. How does the administration plan to do that?
Well, we put out a statement from the president this morning, but let me just reiterate some of the key points, and I will, of course, answer your question. As the president said this morning, its extreme Texas law blatantly violates the constitutional right established under Roe v. Wade and upheld as precedent for nearly half a century. It will significantly impair women's access to the health care they need, particularly for communities of color and individuals with low incomes. It also deputizes private citizens to bring lawsuits against anyone who they believe has helped another person get an abortion, which might even include family members, healthcare workers, front desk staff at a healthcare clinic, or strangers with no connection to the individuals. This further isolates individuals who are facing this tough choice. And I would note, for those of you who didn't see, people who report, who for these private citizens could get up to $10,000 for reporting somebody who's seeking an abortion. So our focus and the president's focus
a good way to make money.
is to reiterate our deep commitment to the constitutional right, of course, established by Roe v. Wade nearly 5 decades ago.
Oh, you
and
guys
to
care about the
continue to
constitutional
call for
right then?
codification
What about
of
right to
rights
bear
that
arms?
The president talked about on the campaign trail, the vice president talked about on the campaign trail.
Campaign
and this
trail.
highlights even further the need to move forward on that effort.
The campaign trail.
Come on, man.
One on COVID in Afghanistan, the second one on Afghanistan, specifically the boosters. President Biden has pledged to follow the science in the fight against COVID.
Yeah, Kelly, thank you. Thank you. It should be a tough freaking choice.
The decision to make boosters widely available this September is a bit premature, and that it was made before health experts were able to fully weigh it. So here's my question. What can you tell people who are concerned that the desire to get ahead of the virus has actually put us out in front of the science instead?
The science. God, I hate that word.
Science. And let me just reiterate some things.
God,
for
fix
anyone
your
who's expressing
mic.
concern.
Jeez.
This was a decision made by and announced by the nation's leading public health officials. Everyone from Dr. Rochelle Walensky, the head of the CDC, Dr. Janet Woodcock, acting FDA commissioner, Dr. Francis Collins, NIH director, and Dr. Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. They reviewed mountains and mountains of available data on vaccine effectiveness and made a clinical judgment that boosters would be needed and announced a plan to begin them in September, subject, of course, to the FDA and CDC processes to continue. We also know that there needs to be a plan in place to implement these booster shots around the country. But I will tell you that this was a recommendation made by our nation's leading health experts based on mounds and mounds of data. There will still be a final piece of this process that will be seen through, but our responsibility and our objective is to save more lives, protect more people, and as soon as this data, the science made clear that
Such a fun
boosters
way
would
to
help do that, we wanted to put that information out.
It's all about saving lives.
September 20th date.
How could you be against that?
Is that firm, that date to roll out boosters, is that a firm date?
Well, it's based on and pending the final, subject to the final FDA and CDC processes, yes.
Okay, and then one on Afghanistan. There's some reporting that we'd like to confirm regarding a call in July, between President Biden and former Afghanistan President Ghani. One, that both leaders appeared completely unaware that the Taliban would take over, and secondly, that they discussed plans to project that Afghan forces were still in control. Is that accurate?
Come on,
Can you
man.
tell us a little bit more about that call?
Well, I'm not going to get into private diplomatic conversations or leaked transcripts of phone calls. But what I can reiterate for you is that we have stated many times that no one anticipated, the vast majority, I should say, there may have been individuals and agencies, so I don't want to eliminate that
Like Joe
option,
Biden?
but, our national security team and no one in Congress, or I would say most people out in the public, anticipated that the Taliban would be able to take over the country as quickly as they did, or that the Afghan National Security Forces would fold as quickly as they did. So even the content of the reporting
Nobody,
is consistent
except for
with
the
what we've
report
said many
said
times publicly. I'll also note something that the president
otherwise.
said in his press conference around the same time of this reported phone call. The Afghan government and leadership has to come together. They clearly have the capacity to sustain the government in place. The question is, will they generate the kind of cohesion to do it? And what the president conveyed publicly and certainly privately as well,
What up, BB?
repeatedly to Afghan leaders, as did our national security officials, is that it's important that the leaders in Afghanistan do exactly that, lead, and show the country that they are ready to
show us,
continue
Taliban.
to fight against the Taliban, that they have the will for the Afghan National Security Forces to continue that fight even as our U.S. forces leave.
Exactly. Even though we were supplying them, we stopped supplying them. Get your act together.
Even the former president of Afghanistan didn't have that confidence in the Afghan forces. Is that why maybe he was pushing Ghani to be more stern and to be more confident?
Yeah, it's like, maybe, is that why he left?
And I just noted an example publicly that the Afghan leadership at the time needed to do exactly that, lead. They needed to come together in a cohesive manner. They needed to be united. They needed to show the country,
You're a lying
the
dog-faced
Afghan
pony
people,
soldier.
they were going to fight and they were going to lead through this transition, even as U.S. forces left. That is entirely consistent with what he has said publicly throughout. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. One on Afghanistan, one on COVID as well. A few colleagues of mine have determined that there's roughly 17,000 Afghan refugees and military installations in 5 states here as of Tuesday, while another 40,000 remain at bases overseas.
17,000 interpreters.
Curious, how many of those Afghan evacuees have other countries committed to resettling, or what is the status of those ongoing conversations? And will the U.S. resettle, or otherwise, will the U.S. resettle all of those 40,000 here in the United States?
Well, not to refute the reporting of your colleagues, but just to note, the Secretary of Defense just confirmed it's about 20,000 who have come into the United States at a briefing earlier this afternoon. There is capacity, and we're working towards capacity at our military bases for up to 50,000.
Yeah, that was a buzzword
this is not a
salad.
place where people would live. This is a place where people would go. They would receive medical care and assistance and get connected with refugee resettlement organizations that are play a vital role as refugees come to our country from wherever they come around the world. We are also working with third countries on what their capacities are. I can't give you an exact breakdown now.
Sure, we
it's
are.
a very important question, but that's exactly what our Department of Homeland Security, what our diplomatic team will be working through in the coming days, and I'm certain they will be providing updates as we have that established.
You've talked about this a little bit, others have as well, but there are, of course, concerns among lawmakers, experts who've tracked this, who say in previous
I love that word,
arrivals
experts.
of large numbers of refugees from different parts of the world, inevitably there may be a small handful who are eventually deemed a security risk of some kind. What reassurances can you
Let's
make
watch this
about
spin.
the screening process and the attempts to make sure that somebody like that doesn't make
Let's watch
his or
this
her way
spin.
I can absolutely assure you that no one is coming into the United States of America who has
With
not
ill
been through
intentions?
a thorough screening and
Oh,
background check
sure.
process. And
Sure.
there are many individuals, as you noted, who have not been through that process, and they have
Yeah.
gone to lily pad countries as that process has been completed.
Yeah,
It
the
doesn't
government's
mean
good
that
at
that's
that.
because there's a flag. It means they have not completed their paperwork, and we were working to save tens of thousands of people. Hence, we evacuated them to these third countries.
But
And
there's
COVID,
security risk?
Is
Maybe.
there any update on the U.S. decision to keep Europeans and Canadians from visiting the United States? There were a few public messages from ambassadors here in Washington, the EU ambassador, the Polish ambassador, among others, saying the time has come for vaccinated Europeans to be allowed entry into the United States. Our people deserve to be reunited with loved ones and to have the opportunity to visit this great
It's always an
nation.
emotional
This
push.
is something a lot of people worry about. Just curious if there's a status report.
Well, we certainly understand that and relate to that and know that people are eager to be reunited with loved ones, and that is something that's impacting many people around the world. I would note that we are right now working across federal agencies to develop a consistent and safe international travel policy. That has obviously been ongoing for some period of time.
We don't want
That
them
includes
here. We don't
travel
like
from
them.
Europe and other countries around the world. And it is one that we want to be equitable. We want it to have standard requirements.
Equitable.
So there's clarity, and so there's equity.
There's a
across how
buzzword.
we approach it.
Equity, twice.
This will involve, of course, efforts
Say
to step up
equity one more
protecting the
time.
American people. It may also involve ensuring that over time, foreign nationals coming to the United States are fully vaccinated, with limited exceptions.
Yeah, like the illegals
No
crossing the
decisions have been
border.
made yet, but that
I mean,
is a process that's ongoing. We
I didn't mean to
certainly
call 'em
understand
that.
the interest in it being resolved and completed. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. It's been now a couple days since U.S. troops left Afghanistan. I understand you have continued to say the mission will continue to bring people home through diplomatic and other ways. Yesterday, you guys at the White House didn't have an answer on whether any Americans or refugees had made it out. Is there an answer today?
Well, again, this is an operation that's being overseen by our State Department from a diplomatic front. They have a briefing today. If there are updates to provide,
Dude, beep beep. I think it's only a matter of time before those videos start coming out. I mean, they're already doing their military parades right now. So, with our $85 billion of
we can
equipment,
get the airports operational again. We're working with the Qataris, the Turks, and others who are being partners in this effort. The civilian side of the airport had a lot of destruction to it, and we need to make repairs in partnership with them so we can get airports and airplanes, I should say, up and running. That will have a huge impact once that is up and operational. The other piece is overland efforts. Now, some of this is there are steps, as we have seen over the course of the last few weeks, where individual American citizens are able to depart without conveying that they have departed yet. So what we are doing is we are tracking and staying in contact with all of the American citizens we are aware of on what our plans are, what the progress is, and what the as we have updates on the timeline for when they can be able to deploy.
Every time I've done drinking games for this administration, it's never ended well.
An update from the State Department?
They hit every word, every
Course
time.
correction. I asked them today if they had any updated numbers, and nobody's gotten back to me. I understand the briefing's coming up. But is there a time frame where you guys will be able to leave since the U.S. forces withdrew, and we're not able to measure that, or we're not able to publicly release that? Is there a plan to do something else so that that movement can happen?
Well, today is September 1st. We ended our presence in Afghanistan yesterday. Or else there's the diplomatic front. We have more than half of the countries in the world who have agreed that the
Negotiating with
expectation we are going to press upon the Taliban
terrorists.
is that people will be able to freely move, depart the country.
We're gonna diplomacy. We're gonna be negotiating with the people we were told not to negotiate
On
with.
both airplanes, so that can depart, or getting the airport up in operation.
Yeah, maybe we could have like Taliban flying back and forth. They're good people. What is your problem?
We have contact with.
Whatever you think about the Taliban, it's the
To
opposite.
get them out of the country. I'm not sure what a course correction would look like.
Uh-oh.
That is what our efforts are at this point in time. 36 hours after.
Wasn't me. My internet's
Or
good.
just about
Uh-oh.
2 days after our last planes depart.
And we're hearing about some journalists who were left behind. Fox confirmed that a number of journalists working for U.S. Agency for Global Media, federally funded agency, Congress, including Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty journalists, were left behind. And we're now also hearing from some senior State Department officials who were available to so many that they were instantly ubiquitous, that those priority groups could not get through. Was that a contingency that was planned for?
Well, Jackie, I think it's important to remember.
What is going on? My internet's good.
120,000
It's
people
them.
made it out of the airport and out
What is going on
of
with
the
you two?
country. And our commitment to people who want to evacuate, want to leave, American citizens,
They're like editing them
journalists,
live.
Afghan partners who have stood by our side, is enduring and remains. I know there's been some reporting on this, so let me give you just a couple of examples, because now we can talk about this, of some of the ways that we work to get American
Dude, what is going on with their
citizens
internet?
One, the most used method was the muster point, or what we called the muster point. The state to bus them into the airport in convoys or escort people on foot. We offered multiple opportunities for each of these muster points at various times, each with multiple transits to the airport. The majority of American citizens who got out were evacuated exactly this way. We also talked people through one-on-one walking into the airport with State Department officials on the phone, on the other, effective at resolving problems on the ground, one by one, in challenging environments.
What is going on with their
in
internet?
limited cases, and some of this was reported, where people were
It's too
trapped
much
or in immediate
BS.
danger. U.S. security forces went beyond the wire. Sometimes even a helicopter to pick people up safely. We didn't talk about these much.
Seriously, my internet's good. I'm still live streaming.
At the time, because they were dangerous
weird.
missions, we didn't want to create the expectation that we'd be sending a helicopter
Might have
for
to go to
everyone
a
who wanted to
different-
leave Afghanistan. So I note those because I think it's important
White House, man, you guys suck.
to understand the steps and the roles that our U.S. military on the ground
Just for
took,
that.
far beyond just checking people off on a list at the gate, to ensure we could get American
What?
citizens, our Afghan partners, and others out, and we will continue those efforts through the means I just
Bonnie, I just want to put
going to go into details of a private conversation, but
No,
what we
there's
saw
their
over the
network
course of the last
admin.
few months is a
I think
collapse in
he is.
leadership. And that was happening even before Ghani left the country. What the president has conveyed repeatedly,
Oh my.
privately and publicly, is you need to stand up and lead your country. And that's something he said at a press conference in July in public forum as well. Go ahead.
By my math, we're just shy of 48 hours since the
Thank you for your math. It's all running
military
together.
aircraft leaving Afghanistan. We've learned a lot more just in the last
Yeah,
a
good
few
map.
hours about the nature of the cooperation we saw over the last 2.5 weeks between the Taliban
Great map,
and
bro.
the American forces on the ground. I wonder if you could speak to whether since in the last 48 hours there has been any continued.
Again, this would be an effort that would be overseen underneath.
Dude,
the
their
leadership of the
internet is
Secretary of
so
State and the
spotty.
State Department. It will be necessary to have some form of communication and coordination with the Taliban to continue to evacuate people from the country. They oversee Afghanistan, the majority of large swaths of the country. I will note
I
that
wish
we
they would
had
enable
prior
comments.
conversations or methods of engagement even before the last couple of weeks. So it's
I
obviously
like.
a different form.
I
at
think
this
it's
point
funny
in
they
time.
still allow the dislike and like button. I mean, it's it's only a matter of time before they stop doing that.
Obviously, the chief of staff last night said, "I don't know if we will ever recognize their government as legitimate government of Afghanistan." You've talked a lot about the points of leverage that the U.S. holds over the Taliban. Is that one of the points of leverage recognized in the Taliban? Is that something that's even under consideration?
There's no rush to recognition from the United States or any country we've spoken with around the world. It will be very dependent on their behavior and whether they deliver on what the expectations are of the global community.
And then quickly on abortion, we've seen in a number of states, Republican-led states, an effort on voting rights, for instance, to pass similar legislation.
I love
throughout
those
the
words,
country,
voting rights.
On voting rights. What's the level
Voting
of concern
rights.
at the White House that the decision on Texas specifically will lead to a similar raft of laws across the country? And what is the recourse for the White House at a federal level to help prevent this?
Well, the step that can be taken is the codification of Roe, something the president and the vice president have called for and would require Congress to act on. I will note that certainly we've seen, this is not the first threat to Roe we've seen in a state across the country.
Correct.
It's an extreme threat. And again, I would just note, this is offering up to $10,000 to individuals who report someone who is going to get an abortion. I mean, that is what we're talking about here. So, and
Always
beyond
the
that, as
extreme
we've
part of
already
the bill.
outlined.
But
So yes, of course it's of great concern.
I'm trying to make some money, dog.
And of course it's of great concern because this is not the first time that there have been efforts by some in the country to prevent a woman from having the right to choose. Go ahead.
Quick follow-up on the discussion about leverage. Is there no concern here at the White House that China could actively try to undermine the U.S. leverage that it has with the Taliban?
Yeah, why would they do
Providing kind of
that?
access to
Why would they
global
do
marketplace,
that?
I guess.
Well, first I would say that China doesn't have that capacity on their own, and that there are more than 100 countries, a UN Security Council resolution China did abstain from, but they didn't vote against, that presses the Taliban to allow for safe passage of people in the country and those who want to leave Afghanistan. So, China is going to have to think about what role they want to be seen as in the world in this moment as well.
Let me ask you this. The president said yesterday, we are not done with ISIS-K. Senator Kaine, before the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, was talking about working toward a new sort of superseding AUMF. Is this something the White House is interested in?
Yeah, I
working
remember when
on?
they stopped.
ISIS-K is specifically mentioned in a congressional authorization for the use of force.
We've said in the past that we're interested in working with Senator Kaine on that, and that continues. I will note that in this case, ISIS-K attacked and killed 13 members of our armed forces. We have every right, self-defense, to continue to go after ISIS-K, and the president
But
has made clear
did
that's what he
we
wants
go
the
after
military to
ISIS-K?
continue to do.
So future
Or did we
strikes
just do an
on ISIS-K will be in the vein
optic
of
strike?
self-defense.
Again, these are authorities that the military already has, but we also are open to and look forward to working with Senator Kaine and others in Congress who who are looking to update the 20-year-old AUMF. Go ahead.
Just two questions, Jen. There's a bill in Congress called the Women's Health Protection Act that would protect abortion access from state laws like the one in Texas. Does President Biden support that?
I'd have to look more closely at the specifics of the law. Obviously, codifying Roe, protecting a woman's right to choose is something the president's committed to, but I don't have the specifics of that.
So much
of
protection.
that bill, I should say.
And then just secondly, has the president met with either Federal Chair Jerome Powell or Lil Brainerd one-on-one in recent weeks?
I have no meetings to report to you or read out.
There's another form of protection you can use to not have to protect.
Just the events, demands, phone calls that led up to the 2019 impeachment. I'm just wondering, did they factor in any way into the way the White House prepared for this meeting, specifically the fact that Hunter Biden was a key part of those conversations with the last administration?
Don't say Hunter. That's a
Did President
buzzword.
Biden expect in any way, shape, or form to address that dynamic in today's meeting?
No. Jeff?
Jen, is the White House satisfied with OPEC's decision today to continual gradual increases in output? And can you give us a sense of what communication or contact the U.S. has had with OPEC members about that?
It's a great question, Jeff. I will have to talk to Brian Deese and our economic team about our exact reaction. I want to get that right, and also whether we're satisfied with the actions they announced. I will get that to you and anyone else interested after the briefing. Did you have another question?
I did. One on Zelensky.
Sure.
President Zelensky said in the Oval Office today that he was eager to hear President Biden's vision for Ukraine's chances of joining NATO. And he also said he'd like a time frame for that. What is President Biden's vision right now, and does he have a time frame?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand, not you necessarily, but everyone out there, that this is not a decision that the United States makes, right? We continue to support.
Yeah, but we
and
push for it and we talk it up.
Call for ensuring that NATO's door remains open to aspirants when they're ready and able to meet the commitments and obligations of membership and contribute to security in the Euro-Atlantic area. This is NATO membership, right? And we reaffirmed, and our allies reaffirmed in the June 2021 NATO summit communique that we support Ukraine's right to decide its own future. Foreign policy course free from outside interference, including with respect to Ukraine's aspirations to join NATO. There are steps that Ukraine needs to take. They're very familiar with these efforts to advance rule of law reforms, modernize its defense sector, and expand economic growth. Those are steps that aspirant countries like Ukraine need to take in order to meet NATO's standards for memberships, and we certainly support their efforts to continue to do that. Go ahead.
Today was the first day, and very many, they're all blending together at this point, that the president did not have a meeting in the Situation Room with his national security team. I know there's stuff not on the schedule, the public schedule, but does the president view this moment as a time where he can kind of shift at least some of his focus to the myriad of other issues that are on his plate that
like
he
ice
wants
cream
to focus on or has wanted to focus on before the withdrawal became
all men and women created by go, you know the thing.
Standard for most presidents, and those will certainly continue. Look, I think the president knows that his responsibilities and the multiple crises he will continue to have to face as president are part of his job description. And if there is a meeting warranted in the Situation Room with his military leaders, national security team about Afghanistan or any other issue, of course he's going to be there for that. But he also knows that part of his commitment to the American people is getting the pandemic under control, is addressing the hurricane and making sure that people in Louisiana and Mississippi and other states in the Gulf Coast know he's doing absolutely everything in his power to make sure they have power. I didn't even mean to say it like that, but and so he knows that he has to do multiple things as president in order to govern the
That's
country.
not irony. That's
so yes,
irony.
Of course, he will continue to work with his national security team on a range of issues, whether it's follow-ups, diplomatic efforts in Afghanistan, or of course he's right now having a meeting with the leadership of Ukraine. But he also knows he has a commitment to address a range of issues to the public, and he'll continue to do that.
Just one more quick one. One of your colleagues over at the State Department briefed reporters earlier today saying that anecdotally they thought a majority of SIV folks in the SIV pipeline did not get out. I'm not minimizing the 100,000+ Afghans that did get out, but is there any particular specific frustration given the President's commitment to those who helped American personnel on the ground if a majority were not able to get out of the country?
Well, first I would say that of the numbers, and I know Ed asked a question of this, and you all have been asking understandable questions about the breakdown of numbers of people coming out, and that is information we hope to have for you very soon. But 77% of the people who were evacuated were Afghans at risk. SIV applicants, P1, P2 applicants. Obviously, there's a range of programs, and the different names of them mean virtually nothing to most people in the American public, but that is a number that stuck out to me from the largest airlift in U.S. history.
There we go.
Are
There's
there
the
more
celebration
people
message.
Who want to leave Afghanistan? Absolutely.
Sure.
Are there more people who will be eligible for our programs? Absolutely.
Probably.
And that's why we are so focused on the diplomatic efforts that are being led by the State Department, including a presence in Doha, including efforts to engage with the Taliban, including efforts to work with the international community to make clear what we expect. What is also true is that every person who wants to leave Afghanistan and come to the United States is not going to be able to do that. And that is a sad truth, but it is something that it's important for people to also understand. But I will say, we still want freedom of evacuation
I know.
movement for people who want
Hunter
to.
Biden is totally meeting with Ukrainian leaders.
As Yemen continues to roll
They got to
out
sell his
waves
art to
in the
somewhere.
southeast, and we just look at the historic nature of Hurricane Ida, is the administration or FEMA at all looking at ways to proactively identify people who may be eligible for disaster assistance, just given the process of applying how Byzantine it may be for someone going through these circumstances?
What we're trying to do is make it as easy as humanly possible, providing phone numbers, providing websites. As I noted, there are about 31,000 people who have already received checks from, or 30,000, or 31,000, I think I said, from one of these programs.
Thank God.
So what we have done, and I've been giving quite extensive toppers on this each day to make sure you all have all the information you need, is we set up quite a bit of preemptive resources in the region.
You're a
I know
lying
you're
dog
asking
faced
about
pony
economic
soldier.
assistance, and obviously we've worked to get that out the door as quickly as we can, but also to set up generators, food, water, FEMA resources, using all of the resources of government even before the storm hit. That is something that we tried to do to reduce the impact, save lives, make sure we're helping people as quickly as possible.
And then just given President Biden's trip on Friday, that
helping people, like in
around 90%
Afghanistan.
of New Orleans is still basically without power.
Yeah.
What precautions are you all taking to make sure that his trip to the city is not going to take away from relief efforts?
First of all, we absolutely would not go if it would take away from relief efforts. And this is a trip that is being planned in close coordination with leaders
More of like a
on the
vacation.
ground to ensure it's the right time to go. But we are not going to go to any part of the state or visit any community where we would take away from relief and restoration efforts. I'd also note, as I said, at the beginning of this briefing, the president also spoke with the CEOs of the largest energy companies in the Gulf Coast yesterday and committed the full weight of the federal government. We know he knows how important it is for people to get power back on. That is air conditioning at a time where it's 90 degrees, right? That is people being able to be in their homes. Maybe they're in hotel rooms right now and they can go back. There's a range of reasons why, of course, turning the power back on is vital to the people of the state. We've seen some success in Mississippi, but he is pressing on that with every lever of the federal government. Go ahead.
A quick question on the rebuilding of the Gulf and also.
Oh my God. Joe will only adopt those service dogs if they bite.
Is the administration ready to remove tariffs on steel in order to bring down the cost for the rebuilding efforts?
I don't. I know there's obviously an ongoing review of a range of tariffs. I have nothing to report on that at this point in time. We're right now in the stage of recovery. There will be an extensive rebuilding stage, and we will continue to look for a range of ways we can provide resources from the federal government to play a role in that. But I don't have anything to preview at this point in time.
And speaking of the tariff review, when can we expect the results of the China tariff review? And are you worried about customers paying higher prices for imported products at a time when supply chains are crimped around the world?
Well, as you know, we have a
Gas prices
very
are up.
aggressive and
No big
ambitious
deal.
Supply chain effort to address challenges we're seeing in the supply chains. We also were impacted, or supply chains around the world were impacted a great deal by Delta, and we're working in part to address and help many countries recover from COVID so that we can get supply chains up and running.
Yes,
But
Kelly.
I don't have any timeline for you on when that review will be completed. I will note that we look at our relationship with China and all the components through a comprehensive package. Go ahead.
Thank you. One on Ukraine and one on abortion. On Ukraine, when the president was in Brussels, he was asked about Ukraine getting into the NATO membership action plan, and at the time he said school's out on that question. I know the meeting's ongoing, but was that expected to come up in the meeting, and is the president's position still the same?
Again, as I noted a little bit earlier, there are specific steps the Ukrainians need to take in order to meet the requirements of NATO membership. We support the efforts of the Ukrainian leadership to work exactly toward that, and we support the efforts of any aspirant who wants to join NATO.
I agree with you.
Who is working to meet those objectives. Certainly, we expect, and I think they've said publicly they were planning to raise it. We'll see, but that has not changed.
On abortion, some activists today have noted that the statement you put out on behalf of the president did not offer any specific agenda of what's next, or again, specifically how the administration plans to push back against the Texas law. So I just wanted to give you a chance, if there are any specifics or internal planning, to share that now.
Well, as the president committed on the campaign trail and remains committed to now, codifying Roe v. Wade as the law of the land is something that Congress can do. He will continue to push them to do, and that is a specific course of action that can be taken to help protect from these type of lawsuits in the future.
Is there anything else beyond that?
I can't speak to any actions of the Department of Justice. They're independent. I don't have anything to preview on that front. Go ahead.
Has the administration explored whether to grant Afghans living in the United States, including refugees, temporary protected status?
TPS status? Well, many of them are here because they were eligible for SIV programs or eligible for refugee programs or a range of programs that were in existence specific to Afghanistan. So I don't have anything to preview on that front, or I'm not aware of a consideration of that. Go ahead.
Thank you. President Biden will be 79 years old on November 20th.
Yes.
There was a lot of talk about how old he is and how he
Who
will
is
not
this
be
guy?
able to survive at the White House, especially in time of crisis. We've seen him during this crisis, the COVID crisis, the hurricane crisis, the Afghanistan crisis. Do you think that those who call him Sleepy Joe should apologize to him?
I think we're looking for an apology. I think we're looking for allowing the president to continue to address multiple crises at a time, which is exactly what he's been doing.
Biden's doing such a good job.
I think we got to keep going here.
To come back to Texas again, so on one of those specifics, advocates are calling for the administration to lift restrictions on the abortion pill as more states, as was mentioned, are expected to follow. Texas' lead. Is the administration going to do that?
I think that's a decision that would be made by FDA.
They will talk about Roe versus Wade for the next few days because now they can be the victim. Now they have a story to take off Biden and how crappy of a job he did. They're going to talk about how evil Texans are and how the Republicans are once again attacking women. Of course, all these reporters are asking.
Court reform committee that has been meeting. It's a diverse group. They're considering a range of issues and topics, including what the future of the court looks like. I think the president will wait for that process to complete before making any evaluations. Go ahead, Karen.
And to follow on some of these, are there steps that the administration is taking right now to work with Congress to advance legislation? You're saying the president will continue to call for the codification of Roe, but is there something that this White House is actually doing right now on the Hill?
You would think there was nothing else going on in the world but Roe versus Wade at the moment. And I don't understand why Democrats think this is like the issue to freak out about. It just shows you how terrible of a platform they're on.
With members and their staff.
Vaccine rates. The White House COVID team has been touting some pretty good numbers on vaccination rates. Jeff Zients said the other day that there were 4 million more shots in August compared to July, more first shots. What does the White House think is driving that right now? And is there something specific that the federal
Shout out to the
government
triple
is
redhead
doing
threat.
to see that difference from July to August?
Me and Jen.
There's a bunch of different data, and some of it is in your polling, frankly, from some of your news organizations. So I can't break it down for you, but what we've seen consistently as the three factors are mandates that have been put in place by companies, private sector institutions, and others. Fear of Delta, which is understandable. People are seeing
the airline, not the
horrifying
variant.
stories on local news, on national news, of young people, in some cases children being
I haven't seen those in a while.
And that is scaring people, which is, we hate for that
Which
to be
is
the scenario,
good.
but that has certainly
Say it's good.
prompted more people to get
Say
vaccinated.
it's good.
It is also
God,
possible that the
freaking
FDA
crazy.
final approval has prompted more people to get vaccinated, but I don't have an exact breakdown, but certainly we've seen those as the three biggest factors recently. Go ahead in the middle.
Thanks, Jen. How does the manner in which the evacuation was managed affect our relationship with the EU, considering some of the concerns?
Please go back to talk about Roe versus Wade. It's more important than Afghanistan. God.
Trump administration. That's my first question.
I'm not sure I totally understand your question. The last part was which sanctions?
That the U.S. hasn't removed certain sanctions that were added under the Trump
On the Taliban or under who?
Well, in Iran, like sanctions on Iran. So that was an issue within the EU. So some of those
Wait,
sanctions.
are you asking me about Afghanistan or something else?
I'm asking you about how does the manner in which the evacuation was managed, how does that affect our relationship with EU? And then those are some other concerns as well.
Well, I would say first that one of the big groups we helped evacuate were some of the staff and partners from our allied countries, and many of them in Europe over the course of the last 2 weeks. That was done by the U.S. military in coordination with many of these countries. Two, we just got a UN Security Council resolution passed in coordination with a number of these countries to make clear to the Taliban what our expectations are. 3, these are many of the countries that work with us to help build a list of 100 countries, more than half the countries in the world, making clear we are united in what we expect from the Taliban. So I would say that is evidence of us working closely together.
Also, what are we to make of the fact that, as soon as we pull out, you see Republicans discussing adding $25 billion to the Defense Authorization Act. But here, unemployment expires on Labor Day, forbearance on student loans is about to expire, and we're always talking about how we don't have money for human infrastructure, but we see this being put forward.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I would say first,
Human
it was
infrastructure?
not the number one factor, but it did strike the president that we had been spending on average $300 million a day in Afghanistan. $300 million a day. We don't think that's something that most people in the public.
We left $85 billion of military
We're
equipment.
spending $300 million a day. I'll let you all do the math on that. So that is certainly a concern, and certainly, as you noted, there are a range of areas domestically, internationally too, where we feel that money could be better.
Yeah, like our $3.5 trillion infrastructure
Those
bill.
muster points that were used in Kabul to evacuate people, were those used only for American citizens and permanent residents, or were they available to, SIVs and vulnerable Afghans? And also, did the Taliban give any assurances or assist in guaranteeing those people safe passage? And did they make any stipulations about who could be evacuated?
Yeah, we gave them money, and then they took the
yes,
money.
we did use meeting at locations to get others evacuated as well. I'll let the State Department, Defense Department go into any further details.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
I would also note that while that was a way that a great number of American citizens were evacuated, there were also numbers who came, of course, through the gates, including Afghans and vulnerable Afghans who also came through the gates of the airport, especially in the earlier days of the evacuation. And clearly, as I noted, of the more than 120,000 people who were evacuated, 77% of them are at risk. Were people at risk.
I don't.
Maybe that was the number that people
wait,
I gotta check
maybe
my
I don't know.
But,
I don't know.
that makes clear that the Taliban, yes, they did allow more than 120,000
Yes,
people,
because we
including
paid
the
them
vast
and gave them
majority of
$85 billion
vulnerable
worth
Afghans
of
to
military
get through.
equipment.
Whether we met them at a checkpoint, whether we
They just allowed
got
it.
them through the gates,
They're
that
good
is true.
people.
That does not mean we think the Taliban are good actors. We don't.
Oh, right.
But
We don't
needed to
really
work with
trust
in
them.
coordination to
But
get
we
this
have to
done,
work with them, and
as a
we need to
result, it was
trust
the
them.
largest
I mean,
airlift in U.S. history.
Russia and Saudi Arabia, just quickly on these reports that they've inked some military deals. Has the administration reached out to Saudi about what appears to be Riyadh's concern that they can no longer rely on Washington?
We are in touch with a range of partners, including leaders in Saudi Arabia. I'd point you to the State Department for any updated conversations with them.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. We'll see you
Wow.
What about Americans left behind in Afghanistan, Jen? The president said the buck stopped with him. Can you care to elaborate on that? What does the president plan to do to get Americans back home?
He also said yesterday he's getting them home, and we're going to do exactly that.
Thank you, Jen.
I like that he was like, "You didn't answer my question." All right. Yeah, is giving money to the Taliban providing material support to the enemy? It absolutely is. We gave them money and we gave them arms. They have a bigger military than a lot of our partners, which is great. Thanks, guys, so much for joining me. I appreciate you guys so much. Be sure to check out my video I just posted on YouTube and everything like that of my thoughts of today. Check that out. Let me know your thoughts on it. Be sure to comment below, because when you comment below on my videos, it helps the algorithm out more than anything, more than just likes. So I don't know why comments mean more, but it does. So please comment on my videos. It helps me out, and I appreciate you guys so much, and have a fan-freaking-tastic day. All right, I love you. Bye.